City Council meeting for June 29, 2023. Everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call.
Kevin Kadada.
Here.
Tim Rude.
Here.
Cindy Fuhr.
Here.
And Scott Palava.
Here. Okay, tonight's agenda goes through 10I. Any additions, deletions, or corrections to the agenda?
Mayor, I request that items H and I be added under new business. Consider approval of resolution 2023-24. And then consider approval of a quote in the amount of $22,589 submitted by IMES Contracting for work associated with the County State Highway 4 reconstruction project.
I move we approve the agenda with the added items.
Motion by Councilman Kadada. Second by Councilman Palava. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Approval of minutes. Consider approval of the minutes from the May 25th, 2023 meeting and the June 5th, 2023 special meeting. Any additions, deletions, corrections to the minutes?
I move we approve the minutes as presented.
Motion by Councilperson Fuhr. Second by Councilman Palava. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We have two public hearings tonight. I'll call to order the first one, ordinance 2023-316, an ordinance amending City Code Chapter 30.02, the Fire Department. Mr. Jackson.
All right, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. The fire department's in the process of advertising for new firefighters. Because of that, Chief Pumper is requesting that the roster be increased to 30 members prior to the upcoming hirings. The current city code states the department shall consist of the chief, assistant chief, and not less than or more than 25 firefighters. So the total roster would be 27. The intent of increasing the roster is so there are always 25 active members available to respond to calls. In addition to the request made by the chief, we also reviewed the entire ordinance, or I guess chapter 30.02 of the city code, to see if any other updates needed to be made. Recommending remove a volunteer and call the department the Fire and Rescue Department. Chief shall update the council on the department activities when presenting the proposed annual budget. Yeah, you're not going to fix it, Tammy. Add requests for leave of absence be approved by the council. Remove the minimum time limit of 1 hour for trainings, and then lower the minimum age from 21 to 18, and that they shall be interviewed and pass the physical exam. Two more recommendations. Probation shall be 1 year or completion of training, whichever is longer. And the chief, with approval of the council, can establish minimum requirements to be eligible to apply to be a member of the department. Proposed changes bring the ordinance in line with current hiring practices and also remove dated language. The fiscal impact to the city is the cost of the public hearing, public notice. The alternatives would be to not conduct a public hearing and not consider revisions to City Code Chapter 30.02. Then attachments enclosed with the staff report are the public hearing notice, and then both the red line and final versions of the proposed ordinance. Up until this point, I did not receive any verbal or written comments pertaining to the proposed ordinance 2023-316.
Okay, this is a public hearing. Anybody off the floor care to speak? Now would be your opportunity. Okay, anybody have anything else to add?
I move we close this public hearing.
Motion by Councilperson Fuhr. Second by Councilman Palava. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. This public hearing is closed. All right, I call to order the second public hearing, ordinance 2023-317, an ordinance providing for special election to fill a vacancy due to a council member, David Webb's resignation at a time other than the regular city election, city general election. Mr. Erickson?
All right, thank you, Mayor and members of the council. According to state statute, the city has to have an ordinance in place describing when and how special elections outside of the general elections will be handled and what would constitute a special election. Well, with the resignation of Councilmember Dave Webb, the city does need to conduct a special election because he did not complete half of his 5-year term. It was a 5-year term because we switched from odd to even year elections, and every elected official had their term extended by 1 year. We are proposing the ordinance enclosed, which pertains to only this resignation and this special election. The city has the option to draft the ordinance so that it is all vacancies, or the option to just focus on each individual vacancy. And the proposed ordinance is drafted for the latter, specific to this instance. To comply with state statute 412.02, conducting a special election to fill the vacancy left by Webb because the next city general election will not be conducted for more than 365 days, and he has more than half of his term remaining. And then authorizing a special election to fill the vacancy on Tuesday, November 7th, 2023. The fiscal impact for this public hearing, again, is the cost of the published notice. And as far as alternatives, there are none. The city is required to have an ordinance specifying how and when special elections to fill vacancies will be conducted. And then, as just with the previous public hearing, attachments are the public hearing notice and then proposed ordinance 2023-317. And again, I did not receive any written or verbal comments pertaining to this proposed ordinance.
Okay, again, this is a public hearing, so if anybody cares to speak, now would be your opportunity.
I move we close this public hearing.
Motion by Councilman Kadada,
Second?
second by Councilperson Fuhr. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. This public hearing is now closed. Presentation of citizen petitions and comments limited to 2 minutes. So if you're not on the agenda, now is your opportunity to speak. Anybody? Okay, on to the consent agenda. There's 5 items tonight: the monthly bills, the treasurer's report, the board and commission minutes. Consider approval of the following liquor license: Smoke LLC on sale and Sunday liquor. Consider approval to cancel the July 10th, 2023 special meeting. Anybody like any of those items pulled for discussion?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Motion by Councilman Palava,
Second?
second by Councilperson Fuhr. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. There's no old business. On to new business. Consider approval of ordinance 2023-316, an ordinance amending city code chapter 30.02. Mr. Erickson.
All right, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. While this public hearing was just held a few minutes ago, earlier in the meeting. Just waiting for my report to get pulled up here. Again, the proposed revisions initiated from the request to increase the roster from 27 to 30. Ideally, this way we'll always have a roster of 25 active firefighters to respond to calls, things like that. Again, some of the changes: remove volunteer and call the department the fire and rescue department. Chief shall update the council on department activities when presenting the proposed annual budget. That typically happens the last meeting in February. Adds requests for leave of absences to be approved by the council. Removes the minimum time limit of 1 hour for trainings. Lowers the minimum age from 21 to 18. Requires they be interviewed and pass the physical exam. Probation will be the longer of 1 year or completion of training. And then the chief, with the approval of the council, can establish other minimum requirements to be eligible to apply to be a member of the department. And again, the proposed changes bring the ordinance in line with current hiring practices and removes dated language. The fiscal impact to the city would be the cost of increasing the roster to 30. Typically, with turnout gear, training, and getting a firefighter active, costs between $5,000 and $7,000. So if we're looking at adding three more to a full roster, you're looking at that $15,000 to $21,000. I do know that the department is applying for grants to offset the cost of new turnout gear, and also training reimbursements as well. Alternatives would be not to approve the proposed ordinance, and then the attachment is the final draft of proposed ordinance 2023-316.
As to the training expenses, if there was somebody that was to apply that they were already trained from another municipality or something like that, are they, if they're up to speed everything, it's just getting them acclimated to our department then?
Correct.
So that would just be internal, there would be really no additional cost?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and we've had that situation in the past where we had an applicant that was active on a department previously, but there was a lapse in time. So I do believe that they did have to go through the firefighter 101 again.
Okay.
But yes, if they're current and active and there's no time lapse, then yes, absolutely, acclimation and turnout gear.
Okay.
Do the surrounding townships that we cover have any input in this?
I guess I didn't reach out to them. I don't see why they would have any objections.
Okay,
Is
now-
this, is
okay.
this something that is brought before the fire board, or is done
No,
strictly
this is
in-house?
just a city
Our own,
ordinance
okay.
that's done in-house.
I do think it's a good idea to add a few more members. It was busy and.
The call numbers are increasing.
Yep.
And people are busier now, so
Mhm.
there are times when
Less people
we just
around.
don't have the staff available, so. I'll make a motion to approve, sorry, gotta get the right number here. Ordinance 2023-316.
Motion by Councilman Palava.
Second.
Second by Councilman Kadada. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Consider approval of ordinance 2023-317, an ordinance providing for a special election to fill a vacancy due to Councilmember David Webb's resignation at a time other than the regular city general election. Mr. Erickson.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Again, the public hearing for this proposed ordinance was held a few minutes ago, earlier in the meeting. The city is required per state statute to have an ordinance in place detailing how and when special elections outside of a general election will be conducted. By approving the proposed ordinance, the city is stating why the vacancy or why the special election is happening, again, specific to this resignation, and then authorizing a special election to fill the vacancy on Tuesday, November 7th, 2023. The fiscal impact will be the cost of the special election. We'll have rental of the Civic Center, which is our polling place, election judges, supplies, ballots. We'll also have to administer absentee ballots. So there'll be a cost for that training as well. So the city doesn't have a choice on whether or not to adopt the ordinance. It's just the decision would come down to if it's overarching or specific to this resignation.
And the filing period, is that designated or?
Yep, so we will follow the odd year election calendar. If I remember correctly, filing will be August 1st through the 15th with a typical 2-day withdrawal period, and then morning of the 18th, we'll get on the ball and get ballots ordered and all that stuff, so.
Okay. The advertising to the residents? I mean, I assume the city website and the local paper and all those kind of things.
Yeah, yeah, well, our website and the city official paper as well.
Oh, we need to fill the seat. I
Yeah.
move we approve ordinance 2023-317.
Motion by Councilman Karada.
Second?
Second by Councilperson Fier. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Presentation of a West Central Sanitation Good Neighbor Recycling Team Check to the Lonsdale Lions for recycling 35.15 tons of cardboard / mixed paper. Mike Rhodes, West Central. And the Dapper Lions president, Mr. Al Fitter.
Good morning. Good to meet you. On behalf of West Central Sanitation, we'd like to present you with a check for $527.25.
You know, as we send money, thank you.
Yeah, glad to do it. It's a pleasure doing business in Lonsdale. As I was here, I think the last time I was here, I was like a couple weeks into my job, and now I'm working out 4 months. I do enjoy it here.
Yeah.
I like it 'cause it's a little further away from the hustle and bustle over there,
Yeah,
and it reminds me of my hometown in Ohio, and
yeah.
I appreciate your business, and always feel free to reach out to me. I'm more than willing to do whatever it takes to put smiles on your faces, so.
Well, West Central has done actually a really good job, I will say. They've have not heard many complaints at all. As far as the recycling, as Lion President Al, maybe you want to talk on that, but you did a great job of taking care of the site there in the windy days and all that kind of jazz.
Well, we had a couple Lions members that actually came out and chipped ice and shoveled snow, because we had January through March time period, which is a great time period because of the holidays. A lot goes in there, but also a lot of items that are not recyclable anymore, so we try to pull that out. I got my son,
Appreciate that.
who's a Boy Scout, to
Okay.
grab a broom and a dustpan, and he and I went down just 2 weeks ago and cleaned up all the broken glass and all the nails and things that end up in people's tires.
Yeah, I appreciate
care.
it. Looks like you trained my kid to do that.
Scout will take anybody. Lions will take most anybody.
Okay, so we might need to go that route.
Always on membership hunts. It's a good sized check.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Good.
Appreciate it.
Good job. Thank you
Thank
both,
you.
gentlemen, thank you. And a big shout out to Macintoons also for letting us put the containers there. Really good. So,
Yep.
thanks again, everyone.
Just real briefly to wrap up, since West Central Sanitation took over beginning of the second quarter in 2020, where's all that information? 427.1 tons of material have been recycled, resulting in over $6,400 in donations being made to area nonprofit organizations by West Central Sanitation.
Yeah, really good, yeah, really good. Yeah, even over the years, and even prior to that, there's been a lot of promotion of conservation and recycling and all those kind of things. It's been just a terrific program, so, good. Thanks again, gentlemen.
Thank you.
All right, consider approval of the city's 2022 year-end audit financial statements. Tom Olinger, welcome, good sir.
Yes.
You look pretty smiley for an accountant.
Oh, yeah, and the June 30th deadline, so I am smiling, so no. Well, my name's Tom Olinger, I'm the governmental service partner at Abdo. So, you know, this is our first year doing the audit. How I do my presentation is we really kind of go off the PowerPoint presentation, the slides on there. I certainly answer any questions regarding the audit report, but I think it covers it, and I think we've had good response that the graphics and stuff are really understandable for council and kind of brings the point home. So,
You wanna go up here?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll start off just on the next slide here and talk a little bit about, I'll kind of go through the audit opinion and our responsibility. We'll talk about the general fund results, and then we'll talk about some of the special revenue funds and capital project funds, just kind of on a high level. And we'll talk about the business, the water and sewer funds, and the liquor store there. And then we have a few key performance indicators where we're kind of comparing to cities similar in size on some metrics, just to kind of give you a frame of reference on where you're at. Kind of going into the overall audit opinion and results. We did have an unmodified opinion under Yellow Book. We had the Yellow Book. We did the Yellow Book audit because of the PFA dollars that are out there, which basically involves testing a little bit, kind of review of internal controls and a few things like that to then too. Also, as part of our audit, we do municipal legal compliance, which basically kind of goes through some steps to make sure that the city's in compliance with state statute on various items like disbursements, debt, cash and investments, conflict of interest, and miscellaneous. So they provide us some checklists on what they want us to look for. You know, it's not all city statutes, but they have a defined grouping of items that we need to look at, and we do a test basis on that, and there were no findings related to the municipal legal compliance. Couple of just the overall kind of financial statement findings. We did have the preparation of financial statements, which is kind of common with cities your size. It's just kind of let you know that we prepare the financial statements, and we did take some time and went over it with management kind of to review it, discuss it, see if there was anything that stuck out to them to make sure that we had that review process in place, but we have to note that we did prepare the financial statements. There are just a couple of material audit adjustments, mainly kind of breaking out the capital and also debt between the governmental and the enterprise funds. So we really kind of pulled both the asset and the long-term liability, the portion that is going to be paid by the enterprise funds, the water and sewer, putting those in those funds so that when they get paid back, we have the asset and liability together on that. So those were a couple of the items there, which are certainly pretty common for us to do. So, okay, we'll kind of get into the financial information. So what we try to do is take a look at where your fund balance is in relationship to next year's budget. You know, currently the fund balance policy is at that kind of 40 to 50% of where you're at there, and mainly because you're in December, you're at your high point of cash. You just got your LGA, you just got your property taxes, so we need to make sure that we are able to cash flow, you know, for those next 6 months until the next round of dollars come in. The unassigned fund balance at the end of the year was about almost 55% of next year's budget, which was down a little bit from last year. Kind of the main reason for that is, if you kind of notice, there was an uptick in next year's budget. So, you know, if you're as that budget continues to increase, there is a level where you kind of have to build up those reserves to keep that in line going forward too, and keeping those operations going. Overall, in the general fund, which is the green line, the total fund balance, you're at 102%. What basically the difference is there is some of the assigned dollars. We have some fire department, let's see, we have about 1.2 million just assigned for the fire department. That's a kind of a separate fund that you see out there. And then a good chunk of it, 300,000, was just assigned for road and bridge that is kind of lumped into that on there. So one thing that, you know, I kind of see too is that, you know, with the general fund, we see, you know, if we're paying a lot of capital, so you kind of see that trend of the overall budget going up and down, which a lot of times has to do with some capital being paid out of there or something during the year. One thing that we see a lot of cities do is kind of break it out into a capital improvement revolving fund. You know, and have that just be strictly the capital portion, and really focus on the general fund just being operational side of things. You know, a lot of times in the budgeting process, it does make it a little bit easier, and then you have that kind of separate piece out there. So certainly something to consider. We just see a lot of cities doing that, and you know, kind of going forward, especially as operational costs are going up, kind of really understanding that general fund levy on that's following those operational costs. Overall, general fund is healthy. You know, I think once again, as that expenditures go up, just kind of monitor that fund balance is kind of staying at where it needs to be. So, a couple items, taking a look at the general fund budget to actual. Revenues and expenditures did have a favorable budget variance in both in all areas there, and the net change in fund balance is about $350,000. Of that $350,000, $200,000 of that was going to some of those assigned dollars in the overall total fund balance. So really, your unassigned balance went up about $150,000 compared to last year. A couple items to note. In the revenue side, we had the additional sale of assets of about $95,000 extra there, and then also some additional tax collections of about $57,000 there. Main point of the expenditure side was related to some capital outlay that was budgeted and just not done this year, and so that was just kind of setting aside probably some of those capital reserves for future capital needs in the general, and that's where I was kind of talking, if it was the intent of setting aside the reserves, that could potentially go into like a capital improvement revolving fund too. So just something to think about there. Taking a look at the overall general fund revenues by type. You know, taxes, as I noted, did come over budget on the collections on there, so there were some additional taxes collected there. We'll talk a little bit about the tax rate later, which kind of outlines kind of that impact on the citizens on what that looks like. Intergovernmental was kind of dropping over those years. We had some CARES dollars and ARPA dollars coming in the past, that not as much for 2022. And charges for services and other have kind of stayed relatively flat and not a big piece of the general fund. Overall general fund expenditures by type. General fund, or the general government was down a little bit this year. And public safety was really kind of trending kind of with the cost of inflation there. And what I was seeing with other cities that were signing, we were seeing a little bit of a jump in the public safety, just because of some of the demand that's out there too. And then also some building, permits, some expense related to building permits go into there too, which can sometimes, if there's that activity, go up there too. Streets and highways were up. There was some and basically between year to year there was additional budgeted maintenance that was planned for those streets, so that was the direct increase there for the streets and highways. And then I kind of had noted before, that's kind of an idea of the capital outlay on how it goes up and down during the year, so it really depends upon, whether it's a 5-year capital plan that you have on what you're following, that those do have those ups and downs based on how you operate there. Okay. Taking a look at the capital project funds. So a couple outstanding items there were the police facility fund did have a deficit of $96,000 there, and then also the street improvement have some costs remaining left to finish up there, and that has about $200,000. As part of some of our adjustments, we did close out the 2nd Avenue Southwest Street and the 2001 Street improvements, that those projects were done. So any remaining dollars really kind of went into the debt service funds to help with the levy going forward related to the debt service. But the main reason why that drop is just the spending of the bond proceeds during the year, which is certainly common. Okay, go to the next slide. Special revenue, the Economic Development Fund did have some additional expenditures in there, and so that did decrease some. I think spending down some of the reserve in the Economic Development Fund. The American Rescue Plan are those ARPA dollars that are in there. We have a zero fund balance there. The reason for that is we do have cash, and I should have looked that up. Was it about 100,000 left? About 100,000 of cash is in there, but we don't really recognize that as revenue. So it's really offset by a liability until those dollars are spent. So that's why it's showing a zero balance in there for fund balance, but the actual cash balance was right around 100,000 that's left to spend. Okay. Taking a look at the debt service funds, so this outlines the cash, which is that first column there, the 1.7 million. So that's currently what you have in cash for those funds. And then the total assets is a combination of cash and also remaining assessments that you have in those funds. So, those will be being paid back. One thing I just kind of want to point out, the graph below kind of shows your principal and interest payments for the next 10 years. And if you can kind of see that those are pretty steady going across until we have those bonds dropping off in 2028 on there. So what this kind of, something to kind of plan for there, like if there is new projects or new bonding that you're going to have, that certainly can be, it looks like based on this, kind of a direct hit to what your levy that you're going to have to issue for your debt. So a lot of times as that process goes along, when debt drops off, new debt comes on, and you kind of have that circle so that you can keep that levy flat. So I really encourage you next 5 years, next 5-year plan type of thing. Really monitor that on what that looks like and how that is gonna look like the funding going forward in those next future years, because we do have a few years where it's going to be pretty steady of that principal and interest payments. Taking a look at the water fund, so for the water fund, the top graph shows the receipts and disbursements from operations, and then also including overall debt payments. So if we kind of take a look at that for 2022, the operations and debt did exceed that amount there. What the city is doing is collecting some connection fees that kind of fill up that gap between that. So those are being used for the debt service versus kind of a reserve type of thing too. But for this year, we did have the cash drop back about 100,000, from 2.4 million to 2.3. One thing about this, I took a look at the debt. The debt really doesn't drop off too much for, I believe, until 2027 in the water fund. The sewer fund's a little different when we get to that, but the water fund, the debt's going to drop off in 2027. So, as of right now, that's going to kind of stay pretty steady, and could be dipping into your reserves as you go forward, just because you're kind of covering some of those costs that aren't being made up by the connection fees and operations. And you can kind of tell by that yellow line, operational costs have gone up. So, taking a look at that, and at this given point, there's some reserves in there, but once again, looking ahead at the 5 years or more, is there going to be improvements that are going to be needed for the water fund? And you hate to start really kind of dipping into those reserves going forward. The graph below shows the cash, and what we do for a minimum target balance is take a look at 50% of operational costs plus debt service. 50% kind of covers any major repairs on there on that too. So that's at 629,000. Your overall cash at the end of the year is 2.3 million. That gap is whether it's capital reserve or rate stabilization reserve on there. So you have that a little bit of gap there, but it is dropping down, and if there's major capital items that are going to be coming out, we could see that drop down, because for this year there was not a whole lot of capital costs coming out of that fund, so really that 100,000 drop is really from operational side of things too. It's not anything outside of the normal there. So this is probably one that maybe take a look at, especially with the debt going out for 2027 and what your future needs are. Okay, the sewer fund. Taking a look at that, in this case, the sewer fund actually went back about 43,000. The one thing I would say about this, that we have the big bond dropping off in the following year. So the way this is setting up, just strictly from operations, not including debt, you're earning about 300,000 in cash. Now, we have about 450,000 coming out, and that's gonna be one more year of that, for 2023, but 2024, that's dropping off. So this one, some reserves could build up, assuming no additional debt comes on in the future, but that would be able to build up that reserve going forward after that bond drops off. Once again, this is, I wanna preface this is a point in time, so I think it's more importantly to have you guys think, what does the next 5 years look like coming down the road? Because you don't wanna make any decisions thinking that those costs costs could change there too. So, that bottom graph, we have about 1.2 million in reserves there. So, you know, once again, it's a point in time, so I really encourage you to look forward on what that looks like. So, okay, taking a look at the general fund. We did have our liquor store. I'm sorry, not general fund. The liquor store. We did have an increase in cash of $30,000. This year, we have a little bit of a cushion there, about 300,000. You know, I guess my question here is, I did not see any transfers going out this last year. Is that something coming down, or are we building up for a capital need of the liquor store?
I think there's transfers coming out periodically.
Okay, yeah. You know, and that's something you know, to take a look at, you know, on an annual basis, and having that come up, because that has been growing a little bit over the years, and could certainly help with levies.
Yeah, we certainly have, we've used this for some public works and,
The gator, the DRS improvements.
Yep.
right.
Yep. Okay. Taking a look at over cash and investment balances, we did have a drop of about 1.6 million. What that mainly is those bond proceeds being spent. That was a big part of that drop. You know, once those additional bond proceeds get dropped down, that cash is going to go down. We talked a little bit about the reserves and the enterprise funds. So those kind of make up a big chunk of it, and the general fund is a big chunk of those the dollars that are made up within the city. So other funds don't have large cash balances in there. So, okay. Taking a look at overall the tax rate, what we do is take a look at the Class 4 cities, and then also with you, with your city there too. So the tax rate did increase by about 5%. You know, that's kind of, tax rate takes into consideration the market value that we have. So a combination of where your market value is, and then also your levy increase too. So this was a little bit of an uptick for there, but kind of right in line with what other cities your size are for that levy. And it stayed pretty consistent over the years. You know, I think I would just kind of watch that. You know, if there's a general policy on where you want the tax rate at, you know, I think those are things to consider, and just kind of follow around that. So, okay, go on the next slide. Overall current expenditures, really not a whole lot of change between 21 and 22 for the city. Relatively, these are kind of your operational costs. As you can kind of see, you know, below those averages of other cities your size. Capital expenditures really vary on there, but I think you've kind of stayed consistent, and you've had a couple street projects, and now this is capital expenditures as a whole. It's a couple of street projects that have that up higher for these last couple of years then too. So, okay. we can go to the next slide. Yeah, so other than that, I think, first year audit is always collecting information, it takes a little extra time, but we certainly appreciate the staff, getting us the information. We, ask for a lot of stuff and being able to kind of work through that. So yeah, with that, I would certainly open it up to any questions you might have, whether it's on the audit report or the presentation.
I think just to summarize, I think kind of touch on this, but for our city, for our size, has a pretty healthy fund balance, pretty good condition.
Yep, and I preface that by saying, depends upon what, I think at this given point, yes, I keep encouraging, look out, 5 years, and more, and kind of keep that future planning on there, because that, it certainly can change on there, but at this given point, yes.
And I think you've probably looked at some of the history, I think, because the council and the staff were pretty cognizant of expenditures and,
Yep.
Not raising taxes. And
Yep. Yeah, well, and you can kind of see that, keeping that tax rate relatively flat, and then also the current expenditures are, from the operational side are kind of below that line item too.
I mean, I think, Joe, you're talking our tax rate is lower than it was 5 years ago, substantially lower, so.
Yep.
Again, working with staff seem to go okay.
Yep. So, yeah, and like I said, I appreciate it, because we asked for a lot of stuff
Yeah.
the first year and trying to get things.
And they do a really good job, I mean, we don't have a large staff, obviously,
Yeah.
so appreciate all your work, Joel and Tammy.
Well, shout out to Tammy, she's the one, this is her project, so she does 99.9% of the work. So she deserves the credit.
Thank you for all that. Thanks to the council too, we do spend a lot of time, we're currently in our budget meetings, and like I say, we're really cognizant, and I think you touched like on the water a little bit, probably rates should probably go up a little bit, of course, and all that kind of stuff, but we're certainly trying to hold the line on everything. No, they've done really good.
I know in past years, there's always been notes about, we had some issues with delegation or duties and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But in a
Yeah.
community our size, it's.
Yeah,
what we
and I
do
think
about it.
it's having some checks and balances in place, it's like, if you have the compensating controls where there's review of bank recs and various things then too, I think, that I think it's important for you guys to realize that, and, the approval of bills and looking at those, but then also just having some other compensating controls where it might not be perfect, but it's at least a couple eyes looking at it.
Okay, anybody else, any questions? Well, thank you, sir.
Okay, well, thank you, and if any questions do come up at all throughout the year, just let us know.
Okay. Good.
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right, thanks. Yep.
Bring a shine off our heads.
I know it. I guess just to reiterate, just to summarize, I want to thank Tammy and Joel very much for all your work over the years. And, the city is really pretty strong financially, and I think the council has done a really good job. We spend a lot of time in the budget meetings and all that kind of stuff, so. Good job there, everyone. Good job, Tammy. Okay, on to, let's see, so we should have a motion to accept the audit.
Yes. So we'll,
Okay, motion by Councilman Kadada.
Second.
Second by Councilman Palava. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
I.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Do we need to have this light back on, or?
We don't have to.
Okay. All right, on to consider approval of a request for proposals for professional auditing services. Mr.
All right, thank you, Mayor and members of the council. The last time that the city went out for auditing RFPs was in early 2000. We selected Schlenner Wenner and Company to do the city's audit. They did it for 20 and 21. And late in 21, I received a letter from them that they were not going to be able to complete the city's audit, and which forced us to send out an RFP, which Abdo responded to. We selected them to do the audit, as Tom alluded to here just a minute ago. The first year that they did the audit for us recently, I believe, maybe early 2000s to '04.
Yeah.
Maybe '03, '04, they were our auditors at that time as well.
Right.
So really, the 22 was again, the third year of that 3-year term. So we're looking to get approval from the council of the proposed RFP for auditing services for years ending 23, 24, and 25. Kind of a quick summary of the RFP. It's a 3-year contract, must be a qualified firm or CPA. The selection timeline, June 29th tonight, RFP would be approved. RFP's due July 24th. Week of the July 31st, we'll review the proposals. Interviews, if necessary, would be the week of August 7th, with the council being presented staff's recommendation at the August 31st council meeting. Work on the audit would begin in January, and a presentation of the audit to the council no later than April 30th. Proposal to include all fees for all necessary work to be included and compliant with any and all rules and regulations governing municipal audits. And then evaluation criteria would be used as well. The fiscal impact to the city this year, or I guess 22 year-end audit, was $31,500. I'm probably anticipating probably a 10% increase for the next several years. As far as alternatives, would be to contact ABDO and request a proposal from them and no other firms, or solicit directly a different firm. And then enclosed with the staff report is the proposed RFP for the auditing services. So unless the council has any questions, staff would make a recommendation to approve the proposed RFP for professional auditing services.
So moved. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. Nope.
Motion by Councilman Calava,
I'll second that.
second by Councilman Karada. Any further discussion?
I was just gonna say, I do think it makes sense to go for proposals and not just offer it to the same
Right.
company.
Yeah. I
Are
mean,
you
they're more-
sati- are
they're
you
more
sati-
than willing to, or
Yep.
more than able to submit a proposal.
Are you satisfied with them? With how they did a good
Yeah,
job?
I think they did a good job and worked well. I think we worked well with them, so.
Okay, good.
Was there anything that you saw that they presented new to you versus other from Splinter Winter?
Everyone is a little bit different. I think every auditing firm is a little bit different, how they want to see things, but otherwise it's pretty much,
So nothing earth shaking?
no.
Okay.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. On to consider approval of land use permit number 2023-02, City of Lonsdale Public Works Storage Facility Site Plan. Mr. Erickson.
All right, thank you, Mayor and members of the council. The proposed land use permit 2023-02, as was just stated, is for Lonsdale Public Works Storage Facility site plan approval. Kind of following previous staff reports. Overview, the applicant, the city, requesting approval of a site plan to construct a 4,000 square foot storage facility and associated site grading, drainage, concrete pad, apron, and restoration. The facility is proposed to be a pole shed style building, have metal roof and siding, which will match the colors of the existing building as best as possible. I will say what's included with the staff report doesn't do the actual colors justice. It's almost spot on with the gray of the current building. Have 4 garage doors, 2 service doors, power and heat. As we went through this process, it was decided to include finishing off the interior of the building, which will be insulated. It is not proposed to provide water and sewer. One of the things that was brought up to the planning commission was to at least provide a service and or a curb stop and a line underneath the concrete pads. So if and when that time comes, we just run a line and connect to the curb stop. We don't have to get underneath the floor and bring it up for service.
Could I ask, the idea of putting a curb stop in the property? I know it's a city, facility, but should someday, we get, we move somewhere, you know, do something else, if it was private, then there would be no way to turn off the water to, you know, if it became a private property.
Correct, you would, you would want to install a curb stop,
So you could turn it
so you could.
But we'd want a curb stop
outside of the building.
outside the facility.
Correct, yes.
Yep.
Okay, okay.
Yep, and stubbed from the
So,
curb
okay, you weren't
stop
saying
into
put the curb
building.
stop in the building, you were
No,
saying
yeah,
put
it'll
a curb.
be outside the building.
Outside the
but
building, okay,
stop
all right, I
just
misunderstood, I
underneath.
thought you were saying the curb stop would be inside the building, so,
Right.
okay, all right, disregard.
It's also proposed to have a 10-foot wide concrete apron the length of the front of the building. If approved, site work would be completed late July, early August, with construction of the building expected to begin in mid-August. After the building's constructed, the concrete floor and an apron will be poured. The public workshop is located at 635 Industrial Drive Southeast in the Lonsdale Industrial Park, second edition. There's two parcels actually that comprise the city shop, which total just under 4 acres. When we started this project or process, I contacted the county about combining those lots, so we just had one lot. Since they are in different, different school districts, it's right on the line. We were not able to combine the parcels together. We actually have similar situations like that up in Welco, where the front yard is in the New Prague School District and the house is in TCU. So kind of in that area around the city shop and the water towers, kind of where everything comes together for school districts and in sections. As stated previously, the city is the applicant and owner. And again, requesting approval of the site plan for construction of the concrete pad, site grading, drainage and restoration for the storage facility. The property is currently zoned PF, public facilities, and you can see what the setbacks there are. What staff is proposing for setbacks, the front yard setback would be 300 feet. The east corner side would be 30 feet, which is consistent with the existing shop. The west corner side yard would be 260, and then we would be proposing 270 feet from the rear, or the south property line. Public works garages and related uses are permitted uses. There are no requirements for building design. With that said, we wanted to be cognizant of the buildings that are in that area and our current building on that site. So I think it will definitely match the existing building well. Also be compatible with the adjacent properties. The Planning Commission did review the application at their June 12th meeting and did recommend approval. As I said, there was 2 comments that got brought up. One, we just talked about the water service, but then also if the building needed to have fire suppression or not. I know the fire chief reached out to the state fire marshal, provided me some information. Really, when we go through the building permit process is when the building inspector will really look at it and determine. From what I read, I do not think it needs to be sprinkled based off of our the classification that kind of falls under. The fiscal impact is the cost of site work, the building, and associated items. We did, there is $196,000 which was budgeted and or available for this project to be completed in '23. With some of the additions that we did talk about after adoption of the '23 budget, there is, we'll have to fund $87,000, either funded internally through a due-to, like we did when we constructed Lonsdale Liquor, or a combination of that and or transfer from the liquor store. Alternatives would be to not approve and or make revisions to the proposed site plan, and the project, in that case, would not proceed. And then attachments are the site plan application, aerial photo of the site and surrounding area, proposed site plan, proposed plans, and then the zoning requirements for the PF zoning district.
Can you remind me, on the back hillside, was that gonna have to be graded and a retaining wall put in, or can that just be graded down to?
Yep, so we're actually gonna grade a swale in south of the building, about 10 feet south of the building.
Okay.
We're gonna cut a swale.
So we really don't have to adjust that hillside?
Nope.
Okay,
No.
all right.
Basically, where the larger retaining wall block are currently, that's basically where it's gonna be, kind of on the existing gravel already. And then that'll drain to the west, where that site or not typically, but normally drains to, and there's actually a little pond. I don't know if it was dug or it just
Right.
was a depression
It's
and
there.
ended up becoming that, but, so, yeah, the drainage will be consistent how it is to the west.
I move we approve land use permit 2023-02.
Motion by Councilman Kadada,
Second?
second by Councilperson Fear. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Consider approval of an ad for bid for the Public Works Storage Facility site work and authorize staff to advertise for bids. Mr. Nixon.
All right, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Well, with the site plan just being approved, the next step is to solicit bids from local contractors to get the site prep completed. Might just be the last one. Bear with me, please. Yeah, so we have entered into an agreement with Ram Builders, again, to build a 4,000 square foot facility. The intent of that is to protect and maintain our equipment, but then also eliminate some of the blight that we have out there. So just storage of odds and ends that, once we get inside that building, we'll really clean that area up. Requesting approval to obtain bids for the site work, include the grading, preparation for the concrete floor, the apron, drainage, and then associated restoration. This work does need to be done before RAM arrives to construct the storage facility. And then it does not include drilling the post holes or the footings, which will be completed by RAM. The footprint, again, is 40 by 100, and they require that it be oversized by 10 feet around, so ensure compaction and consistency with that, but then also just workable space.
Do you have a ballpark estimate on the site work and idea? Should be pretty minimal, I would expect.
We've heard numbers $10,000-$15,000. I guess we'll see what they come in at. There's really not a whole lot of work that needs to be done on there. When we went through this, kind of tried to keep existing grade as what needed to be done to pour the floor. Then included in the with the staff reports, the proposed RFP bid sheet, and then the site work plans. Which kind of showed the existing topography, and then again, just the plans for the project of grading, turf establishment, erosion control, things like that. It should be a pretty straightforward.
And how
project.
far out is RAM, did you say?
We are on their schedule for August 14th or something like that.
Okay. So you don't expect any scheduling issues if we get this out and get a contractor hired and all that kind of stuff?
Nope, we've actually got a pretty quick turnaround on this to bring it back to the next council meeting on the 13th. So, get it awarded, good contract, a couple weeks to get the work done.
Okay.
Make a motion to advertise for bids for the Public Works building.
Motion by Councilman Palava,
Second?
second by Councilperson Fear. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. On to the couple added items here. Consider approval of resolution 2023-24, a resolution accepting a donation from the Lonsdale Firemen's Relief Association. Mr.
All right, thanks, Mayor, member of the council, or members of the council, excuse me. Yesterday, the Lonsdale Firemen's Relief Association made a $7,000 donation to the city. As with any donation that's made to the city, we need to adopt it so everyone knows what the funds are to be used for, and if the city does in fact want to use them for the desired donated purpose. In this case, as I just said, the donation's for $7,000 from the Fire Relief Gambling Fund. The intent is to purchase fire department equipment, typical of donations that the relief makes to the city. This would be part of that, as the auditor just said, fund balance, this will be added to that fund balance, and a lot of that fund balance did come from the relief. You know, I guess, not to get back on the audit, but since we're talking about the fire department with that fund balance of over $1 million, it should be noted that the city, on average, pays about 35% of the fire department budget. So of that, you know, we'll just say 1 million, you know, about less than 400,000 actually came from the city. The remaining balance came from the townships.
Right.
To help build up the funds to purchase fire trucks and equipment, things like that, so.
Right, right.
Unless there's any questions, staff would make a recommendation to approve resolution 2023-24.
So moved.
Motion by Councilperson Fear,
Second.
second by Councilman Palava. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Consider approval of a quote in the amount of $22,589 submitted by Imes Contracting for a 48-inch manhole and 8-inch check valve. Mr. Hudson.
All right, thanks, Mayor, members of the council. This is associated with the water main work that the city is has included as part of the County Road 4 reconstruction project. Back when Heritage Estates was done kind of on the curve as you're going on County Road 4 south of the school, water main was stubbed out to that south right-of-way, and with the intent of someday making that connection to 10th Avenue, the water main, kind of creating a loop between like 7th Avenue in Arizona and also 10th Avenue Northwest. Because the upper northwest area is on a pressure system, this check valve needs to be included so that when the pressure's built up, it just doesn't you know, run back into the lower section of town via gravity. And then they will not have any water pressure up in the northwest side of town. So it is something that needs to be done. We got this quote from the contractor yesterday at the weekly meeting. City engineer reviewed it and said that it was reasonable for the work that needed to get done and cost of the manhole and the check valve.
At this point, is there anything else that we know of that's gonna need to be added on to with this project at all, or?
Not that I am aware of at this point.
It's always been kind of a problem up there with pressures and maintaining and lift stations and pump stations.
Yeah, that whole thing, yeah.
I move we approve the quote from Imes Contracting.
Motion by Councilman Kadada,
Second.
second by Councilperson Palava. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That concludes the planned agenda. On to department reports. Shabani, did you have anything?
Mr. Mayor and members of the council, hopefully you can hear me. Yeah, I just want to give you an update on our current construction projects. Maybe I'll start with last year's project, the street project just to the south here. The contractor was working on punch list items. They did complete that final lift of pavement, and there's a couple more items, minor items they will complete tomorrow. Tomorrow is the deadline for completion of all punch list items, so we've been working with BCM on that, and that's on track to be finalized out. And then as far as, this year's projects, the, trail project, that is moving along. The trail along Trent Park was paved, and then 15th Avenue, the trail in the backyards adjacent to the wetland, was paved today. And then tomorrow, the trail along 8th Avenue will be completed, and then we will complete restoration next week. And then as far as Stika Skate Park, the concrete pad is placed, restoration is complete, so, that came together in the last couple of weeks. That is done for the most part.
I would suspect city staff will install the obstacles or.
Correct, yes.
And then, just the mention of CASA 4, there was a, meeting yesterday, and some of the utility work, specifically the sanitary sewer, crossing will start on July 5th for 1 or 2 days, and so that's something that the city initiated, that will be reviewed. And then the water main work that, Joel mentioned, that's a couple of weeks out yet, is my understanding. So those are kind of the two city, funded items in terms of sewer and water, in addition to some of the other items. My understanding, more of the street work will occur, July 17th with the concrete injection that they're proposing, or that they're planning for the street stabilization. And I believe they're kind of working from the east end to the west.
There's some concerns from smoke. I assume that's been brought up at the weekly meetings or.
I wasn't at the meeting, our inspector was, but I don't know, Joel, if you.
Yep, they've talked about just, continuing to provide access and, keeping those barricades open and maintaining that section of County Road 4 between Highway 19 and 5th. Also for the dental office, and one resident has access, and then the fire department as well.
Some of the dry weather helps too, I'm sure.
Yes.
Okay.
All I have.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Erickson. Oh, by the way, happy birthday, Mr.
Thanks. Another trip around the sun, huh? Well, thank you. Where to start? Got election coming up, so we'll be focusing on that. Going to absentee ballot training. Tomorrow is the day that the first review for the community development planner applications will be reviewed. So we'll be working on that. Shivani went over some of the park improvements that are getting done, some of the projects. When we had our second budget meeting earlier this week, with the audit complete, I got the kind of the worksheet, so to speak, for the 24 audit or 24 budget out to department heads. That's got some historical information or data for each line item and comments that kind of, what those numbers account for, as you guys have seen in prior years. Gosh, I don't know, there's just a lot going on. Redoing the insurance, work comp,
Whole budget process.
budget, yeah, just on and on and on. Working with, another item, Public Works is working on the DRS concession stand area. Got the concrete walls poured. I believe the flat work got done yesterday, maybe, if not today. I know staff has been backfilling, getting ready. We're gonna get some sod ordered. I think since they're anticipating a lot of people there, kind of focus on the sides of the concrete, and then once the event is over, kind of sod the larger areas, because it's going to be wet and it's just going to get trampled, and I don't think we want to have to relay it twice. So we'll get that looking good and nice. I met with Darryl Bosevka yesterday on kind of the schedule. We got to talk about that. I put that in front of you on the table. We didn't go over that, so if that works, hopefully.
Yep.
Interviews, kind of get a plan of attack as far as, I think they're going to go to something tasty and interview some of the residents, some staff, the mayor. I'm sure you guys have watched it over the last few years and maybe the last couple of weeks, kind kind of same rah-rah, then they'll have some ball players and kind of history of baseball. I think they're gonna interview Darryl Wasapka and Jim Kubish.
Kubish, yeah. Yep.
So-
Very cool, very cool. 2 Hall of Famers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 I don't know.
It'd be nice if they went to something tasty like at 6 in the morning.
And
They
really
get
get
a-
the
Oh,
town
God,
gossip,
they,
right?
all the knowledge.
Yep.
But yeah, just keep plugging along, and it'll be nice when we get that planner position filled.
It will be, yeah, yeah. Well, thank you for all your work. I know it's been a heavy load for you and all the staff here without them director. But, thanks again,
Thank you.
Tammy.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council members. Just an update on our software that we had purchased. We did touch base with them. They will be sending us dates as far as training for payroll. We did tell them we would like the payroll training done in-house with employees, so they're aware of, you know, how to fill out their timesheet and stuff like that.
Right,
So,
right.
some of the training will be online and some will be here at City Hall.
Can that be simplified as much as possible, or is it?
They're sure gonna try.
Yeah, yeah. It gets to be a lot of payrolls, and especially when you got a
And we did
large-
tell them we'd like the utility billing system done first, if at all possible. We've just been having so many issues with it lately. so.
Right, right. The whole Banyan, that's all obsolete, I suspect, that's all, yeah. So, well, thank you for all your work. I know you spent a lot of extra time, some evenings here and all that, putting the audit together, so thank you very much. Councilman Kadada?
Parks has not met since our last meeting. Planning and zoning had, earlier this month, and we met, and that was, the, city shop that we were building, the site plan for that reviewed, we went over that. I think our next meeting will be a parks meeting jointly with the city council for budget, July 24th.
Thank you, sir. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
your work. Councilperson Fuhr?
The EDA met 2 weeks ago, and we're in the process of looking at the best marketing options for Lonsdale. So there may be some revisions to the website, and we have had a conversation, had a visit from Jason Kutsina, and he gave us a presentation about some potential changes that we could make and make it more user-friendly, better information. So it's in the early stages.
Good, good. Thank you. Thanks for your work. Councilman
Thank you.
Palava?
Expounding on the EDA side of it, we held a educational training on marketing. We had Lonnie Casina came, and he actually has a book on it, kind of, we'll call it advertising for dummies, but it's you know, it's very interesting. You know, it's not just all text. It actually helps you process some of the information that the average person might not have that ability to do. So it was really good. It actually fell under our the BR&E program as far as what people wanted from the EDA, you know, and from the city for growing business. So it kind of checked one of those boxes of this is something we'd like to see. So now we'll move down the line and find something else to
Check another box.
Check
Yeah.
another box.
Yeah, good, good. You know, I kind of touched on this previously, but I do want to thank the city council very much for all your work on not only the budget, but all the decisions, and it's a lot of time you're all on advisory boards, and I want to thank everybody on advisory board, that they add a lot of input to the city and really valuable, you know, park, EDA, planning, zoning, all those kind of things. I just want to, big shout out to all the board members for their assistance. Also, I see the business park, they got the one big slab poured for scan filter, and looks like they're getting close to ready to pour the other one. So that's gonna be pretty cool when the walls go up there, change kind of the entrance to town. And in talking to the administrator, there's a couple more parties interested in parcels up there, so that'll be exciting to keep that development going, so. Very cool, and I would suspect everybody's looking forward to a nice long 4th of July weekend. Part of next week, so that's about all I have.
Will we adjourn?
Motion by Councilman Kadada,
Second.
second by Councilperson Fuhr. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. This meeting is adjourned.